Everyone has that one low-budget movie they saw as a kid that nobody else ever seems to know about. You have to gaslight yourself into thinking you just made the whole thing up, because anyone you try to explain it to just looks at you with that Tim Allen face. For me, that movie was unfortunately The Adventures of Food Boy, a PG teen comedy movie about a guy who can spawn food from his hands. It's thrilling stuff, trust me. It's most notable for starring Lucas Grabeel from High School Musical right around the time that third movie came out in theaters, which is wild when you think about it because nobody fucking knows it exists. They actually have quite a few Disney Channel actors on this project, which is really weird because as far as I can tell, this has no association with Disney whatsoever. I could be wrong though, so if any Food Boy stands out there want to correct me, now's your time to shine. Anyways, I'm very excited to share this gem with you all today because it is quite the special movie. The Adventures of Food Boy starts off with a concerningly cliche movie intro, the writers apparently opting for the overslept the alarm opening. I bet people who have never seen a film before went nuts for that rushing to class bit. Ezra is your typical high schooler. He's got a teacher that's out to get him, a class rival named Garrett, and a couple of dorky misfit friends he does insane gross out food challenges with. Wait, what?
Yummy.
Wow, I'm gonna hate the next hour and 20 minutes of my life, aren't I? So Ezra's entire deal at the beginning of this movie is that he's really into the idea of getting into an Ivy League school. Like, annoyingly into it. He's the kind of student that would care about his attendance record a little too much. His latest resume building goal is to run against his rival Garrett for student council president, an ambition that for some reason none of his friends or family support. In fact, just about everybody in Ezra's life downright discourages it. It's really odd, like for several scenes straight, we just watch everybody close to Ezra just treat him like he's crazy for wanting to run for student council president.
You're gonna be captain of the team this year. You don't need this whole class president thing.
No, I do. I don't have enough for Ivy League yet. They all are president or something.
Oh, please don't start this again, because I can't take it anymore.
I thought you were kidding.
I'm really like at a loss. Like, was student council president ever this looked down upon in high school? Like, did people even care about it? I don't remember people caring about it at my high school, but you know, also my high school was shut down and demolished, so what do I know? Despite the qualms of his friends and family, Ezra inevitably announces his candidacy for president, and the next bit of this movie follows him on the campaign trail. For example, his friend Dylan helps him pull off a publicity stunt, where he chugs an entire gallon of milk and almost pukes. Wow, what the fuck am I watching? Well, at least I still have the memories of my dignity. Yeah, I don't get how this helps his campaign either, and it happens again just a few scenes later with this weird blender challenge. Okay, look, you know what? Let's just move on to a less weird part of this movie. Food-related shenanigans aside, things are looking pretty promising for Ezra at this point. He's practicing his speeches, putting in the time, putting in the hours, and taking what's ours. Please don't sue me, Mr. The Rock. Things don't stay golden for long, however, because remember, this isn't a movie about running for student council president, it's a movie about a boy with the ability to spawn food from his hands. And the movie introduces this plotline in perhaps one of the most ham-fisted ways I think I've ever seen.
Shelby, is it true that if your hands smell like peanut butter, you're gonna die of cancer?
Wow, what a very normal thing to ask someone and not a weirdly forced way of moving the plot forward. So Ezra starts sniffing his hands aggressively and ends up getting peanut butter all over his face, which nobody else seems to find weird, but I did. This trend continues for the next several minutes. Like for example, there's this scene in the cafeteria where Ezra accidentally spawns an orange from his lunch bag, despite saying he was out of food. And he keeps aggressively sniffing his hands, which is just, again, very unhinged behavior. Things come to a tipping point at the student council electoral speeches, where backstage, Ezra's hands not only start smelling like pastrami, but spawning it too. This turns his big speech into a food fight, when his hand motions start flinging pastrami at both Garrett and the crowd, something that again, nobody else seems to find weird. But I did. I also feel the need to point out that every time Ezra spawns food from his hands, they use this really weird squirting sound effect.
Of standards. My opponent, leaders must make decisions.
It's really weird, and it never stops being weird. Anyways, Ezra runs to the bathroom after losing control of his powers, and intensely blasts raw meat, bread, and mustard all over the bathroom, and god damn it, can this movie stop being weird for 5 seconds, please? If you've seen anything from this movie before, it's probably that viral screen cap from a few years ago of Ezra crying in the school bathroom covered in mustard. Well, here you go. So this is all a very bizarre turn of events for this teen movie, but luckily, Ezra's grandmother seems to know what's going on here. As it turns out, they come from a long line of people with the ability to spawn food from their hands. And boy is there ever a lot of lore that I need to explain to you now. Okay, so Ezra's food powers activate on the 59,000th day of his life, to correlate with the alleged 59 different food groups, at least according to this massive lore bible he needs to read, mostly written in Latin by the way, which goes as far as to actually have specified numbers for each food group. So like, for example, legumes are group 1, beans are group 2, and chocolate is group 59, you get the picture. On the first 3 days of having his powers, he's supposed to figure all of this out on his own, but Grandma just decided to throw that rule out, because that one apparently just doesn't matter, I guess. Anyways, now Ezra has to make some innovation in the world of food at some point in his lifetime because it's his destiny, which means he now has to give up on his dream of going to an Ivy League school and become a cook. And also he's not allowed to use his powers too much or else it'll drain his energy and tire him out to the point of exhaustion. Can you tell I'm going fucking ballistic here? Look, I know you're probably confused right now, but at least I spared you from the timeline of famous food spawning chefs dating all the way back to the caveman times. We can at least agree this is more fun than the first part of the movie, right? So Ezra returns to school after his 3-day suspension, which, like, honestly, can I just say this dude got off really easy for decimating the school bathroom like that? In fact, it gets worse. Somehow, after both starting a food fight at his campaign speech, decimating the school bathroom, and getting disqualified from the election, he still somehow wins class president based on write-ins alone. They don't give him the position at least, but that's about the most punishment he gets. In fact, they actually reward his behavior by giving him the new title of Vice President. Hang on, this school didn't have a vice president role before now? Is that not like a staple of the student council system? In fact, going off of the few student council meetings we see throughout the movie, there's only 3 members, meaning the president and secretary were the only 2 roles before Ezra joined. Anyways, I digress. Let's get back into the meat and potatoes of this review. Get it? Because like, it's food related. Back at home during another training session, we learn that the more people Ezra tells about his powers, the worse the food will taste, apparently, which is a really stupid way of justifying the need to keep his powers a secret in this plot. It doesn't really raise the stakes at all. In fact, all this really does is highlight how bizarre it is that nobody seems to get suspicious when he does things like shoot cannon loads of meat out into a crowd. Speaking of bizarre, this next part of the film actually gets pretty unhinged. Ezra's grandmother wakes him up in the middle of the night and sends him to this sketchy warehouse where, I shit you not, an in-universe TV chef shows up and introduces himself as his personal trainer. If you're wondering why he's allowed to know about Ezra's powers, it's because he also used to have them, but gave them up using the 59 clause, a specific rule found within page 5959 of the food book, stating that if you don't use your powers at all during the 59th day of your training, you lose them for good. When I first got to this scene of the movie, my jaw dropped to the floor. It's almost like the writers challenged themselves to see how oddly specific they could start making the lore before anyone higher up would notice. This also made me question how the lineage of this power works, because earlier in the movie it's implied that it's passed down through the generations, but somehow this guy has it despite not being related to him at all. I need a fucking break, this movie's gonna kill me. So this guy's basically just here to add some sort of stakes to the plot by giving Ezra the dilemma of whether or not he wants to keep his powers, which is weird, right? Why would anybody with the power to spawn food at any time be willing to give that up? Well, the movie has an answer to this, just not a very good one. Throughout the latter part of this film, they really start harping on just how badly this newfound power is affecting Ezra's high school social status, which as we all know is extremely important in the grand scheme of things. They really have to stretch to find ways to make this objectively cool power seem like it's ruining his life. For example, there's a scene where Ezra fails his history test because it has peanut butter smeared all over it. I'm supposed to feel bad for him, but this is honestly just kinda hilarious to me. Same with the scene where he loses control of his powers and and squirts milk all over the kitchen in the middle of the night. How am I supposed to take this seriously? There's also this other scene where Ezra's best friend gets chosen over him to become the golf team captain, and Ezra gets really pissed off and just starts throwing lunch meat at his best friend out of spite. And they have this whole friendship breakup moment that just comes absolutely out of nowhere. And also at the same time, the golf coach is like this weird drill sergeant character who only appears in this one scene and then never again.
I think you need some time to reevaluate your place on this team.
This movie's a goddamn mess, man. What is going on here? Things really start to come to a head during the high school talent show, where predictably, Ezra is performing magic tricks using his food powers. In a quirky turn of events, however, he loses control and squirts milk all over the stage, causing his friend and love interest, Shelby, to fall and twist her ankle right before her big cross-country meet. Again, nobody else seems to find any of this weird, but I did. So now Ezra's life is ruined. His friend group is all split up because he threw lunch meat at his best friend and squirted milk at his crush, and he got peanut butter on his test, and oh my god. I take it all back. Can we go back to the class president plotline, please? Sad and alone, Ezra eats lunch in the middle of his school's main hallway because I guess that's more dignified than eating alone in the cafeteria. It's day 59 of having his food powers, and he's determined not to use them so he can go back to his normal life at midnight. However, no superhero movie is complete without a redemption arc. While attempting to apologize to Shelby in the cafeteria for what was very clearly an accident, Garrett returns for one final confrontation. He begins to bully Shelby for spraining her ankle, which now that I think about it is kind of really fucked up, and Ezra is not gonna stand for this. We witness the only final battle that logically makes sense in this movie, a food fight. Yes, an all-out food fight breaks out in the cafeteria, and it goes on for a very long time with bad pacing and weird, unfunny food jokes. At the climax of this epic battle, Ezra is faced with a life or death decision. Garrett has been knocked out unconscious and desperately needs some ice so he can avoid serious head trauma. Does he use his food powers on day 59 to produce frozen peas for his sworn enemy, or does he leave them for the birds? I'm sorry, I can't pretend this isn't corny as fuck. What is going on in this movie? So as you can guess, he makes the frozen peas, and the movie wraps up with Garrett and Ezra finally settling their differences, because I guess Garrett's fine now, even though 30 seconds ago they had to wheelbarrow his ass out of the cafeteria. I sure do love cinema. Ezra's friend group gets back together, and more importantly, he finally gets the girl, ending on a nice little scene where he and Shelby talk about how sweaty she is after her cross-country race. I never want to watch this movie again in my goddamn life. So that was The Adventures of Food Boy, a superhero movie in marketing only. I don't know why my Catholic middle school decided to show us this during a school assembly, because it doesn't have any educational or Christian values. It's just really strange overall. But I'm glad that they did, because now I can share all of my trauma with the internet like a healthy member of society. Now, if you'll excuse me, all of this food talk is starting to make me hungry, so I think I'm just gonna go ahead and... I need to go see a doctor.